At an SBomb party, I was approached by Oil Can Grooming about a bike build. During the conversation, Craig mentioned his granddad had fought in the Second World War, as had mine, who landed in Normandy on D-Day. I thought, wouldn't it be great to build a bike and ride it to France? So we hatched a plan. I'd deliver the bike to Wheels and Waves Festival in Biarritz. On the journey, I could visit the Normandy Beaches, including Sword Beach, where my granddad came ashore. Just looking at the time frame, we've got 6 weeks to build this bike. Now that's a tight schedule. We're really going to have to pull our finger out on this one. I've had a really cool idea for the tank. I'd like to use the orange colour that Oil Can used for their first product, Iron Horse Beard Oil. So if we can do that and then incorporate the route from Poole down to Biarritz on it, I think it'd be really cool. This is where it begins, Poole to Dover. These are actually my granddad's maps. So you can see this photograph here is all the guys that landed on D-Day from 4-5 Commando, his company as it were. And there he actually drew on the map where they landed. So those little arrows he put on himself where they landed. Now it's probably quite hard to see, but when you look really close at the detail of these maps, you can see all the German defences marked out. Flamethrowers, no less. Flamethrowers here. So the boys knew when they were coming in, they had flamethrowers in front of them that they had to get past on their way through. I mean, that's outrageous, isn't it? And this picture there, that's my granddad there on the left. That's him stood in the backyard of his house. And you can see these tunics that they used to wear. That's not their battle dress trousers, but they would have worn these sort of heavy woolen clothing. I've actually got his tunic here. And this is Ouistreham. That's where we'll be going. He told me at one point that they're holed up in a church. So I'd love to visit the church at Ouistreham. This is my granddad's tunic. You can see there on the arms, 4-5 Commando Royal Marines. That was one of my inspirations. I wanted to get up to 4-5 Commando, and I did. If you look at this though, look how small it is. These guys were really quite small compared to what we are now. Little Jack Russells of blokes taking it to the Germans. It's incredible really, and the material this is made out of is that really sort of heavy wool stuff. It must have been outrageous trying to work in this stuff. Looking at the map, this must have been the church where my granddad held up. Although it's only 500 metres from the beach, they just fought all the way through the town. It must have felt about 1,000 miles. Now we're inside just looking around, it's crazy to think this is where my granddad held up. Those guys have just fought through the town and they must have been bruised, battered and exhausted. They'd lost some of their mates and they took a little bit of time out in here. This is where 4.5 Commando landed. That's where I served at 4.5. I wanted to go to 4.5 because that's where my granddad was. It's crazy to think that if I was serving back then, this is where I'd have landed. Amazing to think this is where these boys came in, straight to the German defences. It was so open out there. I mean, it's crazy to think how much went into these defences when you look at it. I mean, this is just one of them. In total, there was 13 million tonnes of concrete using the defences down here and 1 million tonnes of steel. I mean, that's huge when you're trying to think of that. And just off there, that's where the Allied troops were using to land all the equipment. These guns fired 45 kilo shells. Imagine those, the weight of those things and the velocity of them. There's 4 of them here. And all these 4 were firing onto Omaha Beach. Now, to give you an idea, that tower on the cliff top is 2 kilometres away. And these things were firing 23 kilometres in that direction onto Omaha Beach. During the Battle of Normandy, which went on until August of that year, 226,000 lives were lost. That's only 8 weeks since D-Day. Every year you see the figures of lives lost during the conflict, but it's only now, stood amongst the graves, does it really hit home. What a fantastic experience visiting the D-Day beaches. Now it's time to put some miles on the bike and start the journey down to Biarritz. However, there's one more stop on the way. This is the spot here where Frankton started. Now, Frankton was one of the most innovative and daring operations of World War II, carried out by a bunch of commandos that were deployed from HMS Tuna, just out here, which was a submarine. They deployed 6 canoes. Unfortunately, one of those canoes was damaged during deployment, so only 5 set off, with 2 men in each. They paddled 110 kilometres down this estuary in order to hit where all the German shipping were. During that 4-day transit, one of the canoes capsized and 2 of the men drowned, and 2 of the canoes were captured. Okay, so that left 2 left, making their way down. They made their way to the actual estuary where they carried out the raid and put limpet mines onto the shipping and caused a huge amount of damage to the shipping. Those guys then hid the canoes, and then they went escape an invasion, making their way down into Spain. Unfortunately, 2 of those guys were captured and they were executed. But the only people to actually escape and get out was Blondie Hasler, who was the commander, and Bill Sparks, and they made it through to Spain and eventually back into the UK. But in total, actually out of the whole 10 men, 8 of them died, 6 of them were executed, the other 2 drowned, and then 2 escaped. But a huge tactical blow for the Germans. It was fantastic. And those guys were the actual start and the basis of the SBS that then I joined later on. just arrived at Wheels and Waves, and now it's time to deliver the bike to Oilcad. It's been an amazing journey, not only the ride, but the build itself. I hope they like the bike as much as I've enjoyed building it, and riding it here. They love the bike, now it's time for a beer. This has been so much more than just a bike build. To have the opportunity to visit the beach where my granddad landed was amazing. For me, it put into perspective what those men went through. I always knew it was going to be something special, but I wasn't prepared for that. It's something I'll never forget.